Yeah, champ. So welcome to a little bit of a quick training today on how to navigate social events for fat loss. Probably one of the biggest barriers for so many people when it comes down to their fat loss journeys, and one of the main reasons so many people quit on their fat loss journeys in the first place. So let's waste no time and let's get straight into this training today as well. So first of all, the methods that I'm going to show you within this video are methods that I use myself and the methods that I used on my own 5 stone weight loss journey, and also the methods that we use with our clients. As you can see here, Rachel, who's now into a 9 stone weight loss transformation, Abby, who smashed the 30 kgs fat loss transformation, all while spending time with the families, the friends, the partners, the kids. Like I said, these are the methods that we are going to be showing you that you can implement yourself to achieve your own life-changing fat loss results, also whilst managing a social life and actually still enjoying it as well. So let's get into these methods, but first of all, let's get into the common beliefs and mindsets around social events with fat loss. So what I always tend to see is these mindsets and these beliefs when it comes down to fat loss and social events side by side, right? So people always feel like once they've had a meal out, they fucked up the progress, or they've already fucked up today, because so they may as well eat more. They've had an off-plan meal, they may as well eat more. Or because they jumped on the scales of a Sunday after their social event and the scales are up by 5 or 6 pounds, that this diet doesn't work, or they've let themselves down when this simply isn't the case. Or that you need to completely over-restrict yourself, lose your life, take away absolutely everything, eat chicken and broccoli, eat chicken, rice and broccoli every single meal. Trust me, that is not the case either. But like I said, we're going to explain how and why, like I said, a little bit later on within the training. Also, there's no point, I'll start again on Monday. Midweek takeaway with the family, you think, I just started on Monday, there's no point, I've already ruined my progress for the week, when that is certainly not the case. So let's get into the two main methods that you can use and that we use and I use myself on my own fat loss journey and our clients use on theirs too. So the two main methods that you can follow are calorie banking or intermittent fasting / protein modified fasting as well. So you've more than likely heard of number one before, which is calorie banking. So how I like to look at calorie banking is if you were saving money, but of course we are saving calories. So let's say you had a big holiday coming up at the end of the month, you'd probably be a little bit tight with your money. Let's say you were saving £200 every week, for example, for a holiday at the end of the month, because you're probably going to be spending more there than you normally would. Like I said, you're probably going to go all in on that holiday. You need to spend more money. Like I said, you've got that one thing that is coming up that you may need to spend and put a little bit more into, okay? So it's very, very similar when it comes down to calories and banking calories for the weekend social events or a midweek social event. And like I said, this is a very useful tool and it's a proven method to support social events through a diet phase. Like I said, these two methods, I really, really want you to look into them and see which one is actually probably works best for you. Like I said, this isn't a one shoe fits all. This all depends on yourself. So with calorie banking, what you want to look at doing is banking anywhere between 150 calories to 200 calories per day on the days leading up to your social event. So let's just say for this example as well, we're going to touch upon a different example on the chart in a moment. But if you bank 200 calories per day across 6 days before your event, this will mean you've created a further 1,200 calorie deficit, which will ensure you stay on track and on target for that week as well. So I want to show you this as an example on a graph, how this can look. So let's just have a little bit of a look at this graph overall, and just for a little bit of context for this example, the daily calories that we're going to be working towards is 2,000. So let's say for this example, we are working on 2,000 calories per day, okay? So as you can see, on Saturday, we've clearly got a social event. Let's say I'm going for a meal with the family and planning on having a couple of beers, starter, main meal, dessert, etc. So what I've done essentially within this example is between Monday and Friday, bear in mind my calories are supposed to be 2,000 per day. I have banked 200 every day, Monday to Friday. So as you can see here, 1,800, 1,800, 1,800, all the way up Monday to Friday. So what I've done across that week before my social event on the Saturday is I have saved 1,000 calories overall as well. So when the social event comes on the Saturday, if I do over consume by 1,000 calories, I do eat more, closer to 3,000 calories that day, I am still on track and still on target for that week. So the calories that I've saved Monday to Friday by simply just dropping a small little bit of a chunk in calories within that day, 200, this has allowed me to save 1,000 calories across that 5-day period before the social event, and then I've went out for the weekend meal out with the family and therefore consumed more carbohydrates, more calories than normal. And like I said, it took me closer towards 3,000, but therefore I'm actually still on track and still on course to see results that week. And then on the Sunday, we go back to basics and go back to normal, something that we're going to touch upon a little bit later within this training. So that is how calorie banking looks visually, like Monday to Friday. Like I said, you can bank however many calories you would like, depending on how much you want to enjoy that social event of the weekend as well. But for this example, we bank 200 calories every single day and use that extra 1,000 on the social event on the Saturday. So method number 2, intermittent fast / protein modified fast as well. So this is a method that we tend to use with clients who have more spontaneous social plans, and also a method that I use myself a lot. This is probably the one that I use a lot because even my own social plans tend to be more spontaneous last minute. So this works for if you're more of a spontaneous, right, let's go and grab a meal out type of person, okay? So for this example, let's imagine you have a last minute Saturday night plan, the missus, your partner, your boyfriend, whatever that may be, friends have said, right, let's go for a little bit of a meal out tonight, do you fancy a steak, couple of wines, couple of beers, perfect, okay, cool, but I'm on a diet. This is the exact approach that you can use to make sure that you are not having to always say that and that you can actually go and enjoy this meal out as well. So step number 1, what you want to be doing is delaying your first meal of the day till around 12 p.m. / 1 p.m. Okay, so you're going to delay that first meal as far back in the day as you possibly can. Step number 2, you are going to make this meal protein based only. So like I said, we're going to try and restrict any carbohydrates from this meal. So this, for a few examples, you could use eggs, bacon medallions, turkey rashers, chicken sausages. You could use low-fat Greek yogurt. Really good forms of protein to use here as well for step number 2 within that day. And step number 3, you are going to find periods within this day, if you use this method, where you're going to feel a little bit more hungry. You're going to feel a little bit peckish. In the morning before you actually eat that meal midday, you're probably going to feel a little bit of hunger come on. Use things such as caffeine, obviously any form of like black coffee, 0-calorie drinks, Pepsi Max, Coke Zero, Monster Ultra, for example, to suspend this hunger just a little bit longer. So if you start to feel a little bit peckish in the morning or peckish between your meals, let's say between 12 and 1 p.m. and that's 6 p.m. even a meal, start to get peckish around 4 p.m. You can use a form of 0-calorie drink or black coffee to suspend that hunger because, of course, caffeine helps suspend hunger overall as well. So I've actually tried to put this into a little bit of a chart to show you exactly how your day can look when you use this method and how much it can help you stay on target. So for this example, bear in mind, we are using 2,000 calories per day. So that's the number that we're working with. So as you can see, we delay this first meal of the day back as far as we possibly can. And like I said, obviously for this example, we are eating 2,000 calories a day. So we've delayed this to 12 / 1 p.m. and we've consumed 400 calories and we've consumed only protein within this meal. So therefore, of course, because we've consumed only protein, it means we're going to stay fuller for longer, satiated, of course, more satiated, more full. That's exactly what the protein in this meal is going to do. It's going to keep us fuller for longer. And of course, same thing, this is actually going to make sure throughout the afternoon we're not going to be as peckish as if we were just eating toast for this meal, for example, okay? Like I said, most people know that protein, of course, like I said, takes longer to break down, therefore we stay fuller for longer. So as you can see, if we use 400 calories within that meal 1 and it's protein only, therefore, we're only probably going to start to get peckish around 4 / 5 p.m. So therefore, as you can see, the meal outcomes in the evening time, we still got 1,600 calories left within our day. So if we delay that first meal of the day till about 1 p.m, 12:30, we eat 400 calories, only protein, keeps us fuller for longer, keeps us satiated. We can then use a little bit of caffeine in the afternoon. If we start to get a little bit peckish, a little bit hungry, that'll then allow us to push ourselves back to our social event / meal out in the evening time. And therefore, we can actually go into this social event and this meal out a little bit relaxed because we know we've still got 1,600 calories left within that day. And this is the exact reason why I like to use this method myself. Because like I said, I find it's a little bit easier to push that first meal back so I can go into that evening meal without much stress at all. So what could your day look like if you didn't do this method? And this is where that mindset of, I've got a social event, I've got a meal out tonight, I'll just start again Monday comes into it. So this is how easily done it can be in terms of eating over your calories, right? So compared to if you didn't do this, let's say we knew we were having a meal out and then we thought, just fuck it, I'll start again Monday, right? This is how easily done. Sticking with 2,000 calories for this example. 9 / 10 a.m, 400 calories. 2 p.m, 600 calories. And that even a meal, 1,600 calories is probably a minimum. Let's say we end up doing 2,000, 3,000 calories. As you can see, even if we just add all of these numbers together, that's 2,600 calories we've consumed in that day. We've had 600 calories over where our deficit is supposed to be. This could potentially put you into a calorie maintenance. This could put you into a calorie surplus as well, which of course is gaining body fat as well. Like I said, this is why simply using this method, we can just make sure that we actually enjoy this social event and stay within our calories for the day. And if we don't, but there's a very, very high chance that every single social occasion that we do have, and if it's last minute, we end up going over our calories as well. So this is why this method is so beneficial, and I really, really do recommend it as well. So hopefully you can see the differences there between if you actually utilize this method and if you actually don't utilize this method, how much of a difference that this can actually make to your day and ultimately to your fat loss progress that week as well. So one thing that I want to bear in mind just off the back of this, and I want to put this into a little bit of a side note as well that we're going to touch upon in a second. For a lot of people, one of the main reasons they feel like they fucked up is because they see a spike in the scales. They see a spike the following day and they feel like they've let themselves down. When this actually isn't the case. The scales spike and they played six in us, and they play a little few mind games due to the extra water retention. It challenges us all. Like, honestly, me and you both, those scales numbers can challenge us from time to time, right? However, like I said, this is due to extra water retention after a social event. What tends to happen with meals out, obviously, we tend to eat more carbs, we consume more carbohydrates, more breadier-based food, chips, onion rings, alcohol, etc. We tend to consume more carbohydrates, Chinese food, egg fried rice, noodles, etc. These are all carbs, and our body naturally stores 2 to 4 grams of water per gram of carbohydrates that we consume. So if you consume 400 grams of carbohydrates on that evening meal out, or for alcohol and food, which can very easily be done, by the way, we can all do it. You could be storing up to 1.2 to 1.6 kg of water just from that day alone. So as you can see, we can just be storing that all water. So anywhere essentially between £1 and £6 on the scales can be getting stored just through water alone, not body fat. And that's why, for example, after a meal out and after a little bit of a heavy sort of evening of eating, we can feel a little bit like the Michelin Man, right? We feel a little bit puffy, we feel a little bit watery and a little bit fluffy, right? That is due to the extra water retention. I know you probably heard this before, but just to give you a little bit of a context and a little bit of an insight with numbers, this is essentially what happens. So 2 to 4 grams of water gets stored per gram of carbohydrate we consume. And imagine we consume 400 grams of carbohydrate in the evening meal, which is probably a really, really good chance as well with the meal out. So therefore, we could be storing anywhere really. To be honest, this is 1.2 to 1.6 kg, but this could be anywhere between 0.4 and 1.6 kg of water being stored as well. But before we dive on into the actual where the unraveling progress actually comes from, I just want to give you a little bit of context of how hard it is to actually gain a pound of body fat. The time of me recording this, Easter weekend is coming up this Sunday, and the last thing I want for people is to actually, go into Easter weekend panicking or stressing or going to somewhere to buy a protein Easter egg. Like, you don't need to fucking do that. Honestly, you do not need to do that. I just want to give you a little bit of an insight. It would take you to eat between 3,500 calories and 3,700 calories over your maintenance calories to gain 1 pound of body fat. So let's say your maintenance calories is 2,000. You would have to eat anywhere between 5,500 and 5,700 in one day, literally one day, to gain a pound. Just to give you a little bit of an insight, the average Easter egg is 800 calories. So if you focus and maybe potentially use a method like this to implement that within your day, or even if you just enjoy it, you've not fucked up your progress at all. Okay, if you don't get wrong, if you had your full day of food and you went and nailed 6-7 Easter eggs within a day, yeah, then you'd probably gain a pound. However, the likeliness of that happening is probably very, very, very slim. Okay, so like I said, hopefully that gives you an insight. When the scale number shoots up, that simply isn't the case. How much water retention that can be, because it takes a hell of a lot. Even if you slightly went over your calories by 200 to 300 one day, or even if you went over 500 calories of a Saturday, that's not even, that's just a seventh of a pound of body fat, a seventh that you potentially gain off that alone. That is absolutely nothing. So hopefully that really, really helps in terms of giving you a perspective of how much it takes to gain that pound. But as I always say to my clients, the unraveling result is in the response. This is something I teach my clients, and I teach them to focus on how they respond over a social event and after a social event as well. Here's an example of this actually happening this previous weekend. So this chart that you see on the left-hand side is it's a bodyweight graph from my client, Taz, my absolute hero of a client. She's absolutely amazing. She's killing it right now. But as you can see, where my little bit of a cursor is, where my arrow was pointing here, this was before she went away last weekend to a wedding away. She was at a friend's wedding. She was there for the entire weekend, Saturday, Sunday, right? She was there for the entire weekend, out of control of food, buffet food, alcohol, etc. And as you can see, after that weekend, she spiked up by 2 kg. And like I said, obviously, as you can see, when she weighed in on Monday, that was the result on the scale, a 2 kg gain. And normally, For a lot of people, this way they panic. And like I said, for a lot of people, this way they feel like they fucked up and ruined the progress. But as you can see, the time I'm recording this video is Thursday. Yesterday, I received this message from Tasman. Surpassed my pre-weekend weight this morning. So happy. It's almost like you know what you're talking about. This is even more motivation to keep going. It's actually working this time. And you know what's amazing about this? It's actually working this time because this used to be a big struggle for her as well. She'd go out for a meal with a partner. She'd go out to a social event and she'd feel like she'd let herself down. She'd see this spike that you can see right here and she'd just completely give up. But now, having my guidance and actually understanding this and responding in a positive way, you can see how her weight has already come down over 2 to 3 days. And now she's even lower than where she was before the wedding, not even 7 days ago. So this is what's so important. It's about responding in the right way. So like I said, as you can see by the time recording this, she's already down to a pre-wedding weight and even surpassed this. So if you do find yourself giving up after social events, I really do hope this training helps, and I really hope the perspective that hopefully I put into this will really help, especially with this weekend, with Easter coming up as well. And it's always super important to remember it's how you respond. And like I said, if you use methods that we've implemented within this training, calorie banking, intermittent fasting / protein modified fasting, you can control your week so much better whilst and during social events. You can actually stay on course with your progress while still spending some time with your partner, spending time with the kids, spending time with your family. That's what's super important. However, it's always how you respond. Just because you've had a meal out doesn't mean you fucked up, or just because you've consumed an Easter egg this weekend doesn't mean you've unraveled weeks and weeks and months of hard work. It's about how you respond. If you respond negatively and you go, I fucked up, I've let myself down, that is where you will start to unravel the work that you've put in. If you just simply focus on going back to exactly what you're doing before and go back to basics, I guarantee you, probably 2 to 3 days after you've seen a spike in the scales, or 2 to 3 days after your social event, you'll more than likely be at a brand new low weigh-in because you've simply responded in the best way possible. So really, really hope this training helps, especially with Easter weekend coming up this weekend. Hopefully this has put your mind at ease, but also really, really taught you exactly how you can navigate your social events on your fat loss journey as well. So like I said, hopefully catch you on the next training as well, and hopefully this is helped. Let's go.